York Jets have made their first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, and they have gone with beef. Armand Membou will be the newest member of the New York Jets. In back-to-back seasons, the New York Jets have selected a tackle, and this will definitely cause ripples in Jets Nation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. We are giving our reaction to the Armand Membou draft pick. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content. And make sure you get your comments seen, or if you want to donate to the channel, use that super chat feature to jump to the front of the line. The New York Jets had quite the interesting road to get here. I think a lot of the picks we expected to be here, especially after the Jacksonville Jaguars trade up to get Travis Hunter. There's going to be a lot of discourse, I think, with Jet fans because the last two off seasons, especially with the draft, there has been a furious debate with Jet fans. Last year's draft, it came down to taking Brock Bowers or Olu Fashanu or a tackle at pick 11. If you know this channel and you know my thoughts and the opinion, you know that I always value the tackle position more. So I looked at it, the Jets, especially with their left tackle situation last year, that they had to draft a tackle. And even after the fact where I still think the Jets made the correct selection by taking Olu, and I do think time will tell that was the correct pick, unfortunately, we have seen that that is not the case, that basically you look at the Jets drafts right now, that the Jets have found their bedrock left tackle. So the key thing for the Jets coming into this draft was the big debate. Was it Tyler Warren? Could it be Armand Membou? Could it be Banks Jr.? There was a lot of discussion, and I got a lot of feedback from Jet fans. And I actually kind of laughed because I still wanted to stick to my guns in my last mock draft. I had them selecting Tyler Warren because I actually thought Armand Membou would go fourth, believe it or not, to the Patriots. I didn't think Armand Membou would get to the Jets at pick 7. So here's the thing, and I think there will be a wide reaction. I know there's going to be two camps from this. There is going to be camps saying, we drafted an offensive tackle last year. We drafted a center in the second round 2 years ago. We need playmakers. And then there's my camp. The New York Jets now potentially have bedrock tackles for the next 8 to 10 years. You have Olu Fashanu on the left side. You have Armand Membou, who's probably the most pro-ready tackle in this draft class on the right side. A guy that didn't allow pressures last year. A guy that was a menace in the run game. And now you look at the Jets' offensive line. You look from left to right. You could make the case that if Armand Membou reaches his potential and plays well out of the gate, we're not just talking about a really good offensive line. We might be talking about one of the best offensive lines in football by the end of the season. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, the Jets don't have skill positions. The Jets don't have playmakers. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But to me, this was a safe pick. This was the smart pick. And this is the pick that I do think could help turn this franchise around. Now, I know a lot of people will be skeptical. You need playmakers. I understand that. But here is the thing. The Jets and great teams, you have to build and have a great offensive line. I've said it throughout this entire offseason. When you look at the best teams playing in the playoffs, they've invested heavily in the offensive lines. Everyone keeps saying, oh, I want the Jets to be a version of the Eagles. I want the Jets to be a version of the Lions. Both those teams invested heavily in their offensive lines. And this also tells you that the Jets didn't love their internal options with Warren and with Mitchell. They might not even be on this roster by the time we get to camp next year. That is a possibility. Now, here is my argument that I have made for the last 2 months. And again, if you're new to the channel, I will indulge you. But if you're a follower and subscriber, I know I sound like I am beating a dead horse. But here was my thought process for taking a tackle here. It is easier to find a great tackle in the first round of the draft. It is very difficult to find a really good tackle on day 2. When I look at this draft class, great GMs play to the strengths of a draft class. when you look at this offensive line class, especially the tackle position, this is a draft where you look at the tackles, there's probably on one hand a couple guys that you think can actually stay and be really good tackles, and Membou's one of them. Even the Patriots, who took Campbell at 4, he projects better as a guard. We'll have to see how he handles with his limited wingspan up in Foxborough. But to me, Membou was a great player. He ascended throughout the season. He seems like a safe player. He's got the build. He's got the length. He's got the speed to be a right tackle. And the tackle position, let's just remind Jet fans, the tackle position has haunted this franchise for a long time, forever. Since basically the days of DeBrickashaw, Ferguson, and Nick Mangold, we've been talking about how this offensive line is below average, how they miss blocks, how they don't protect their quarterback. Now you look at this offensive line and you are very impressed. And it's telling me what I think this Jet team's going to look to do: win in the trenches. They are going to want to win in the trenches, be dominant in the fronts, and make sure that they can impose their will on you. And when I look at Membou, to me, this was a very good pick. Look, he is a stalwart right tackle. He's a 3-year starter. He has really developed into one of the best ones in the game. He's a good pass blocker, even at the right side. You look at the big plays for that Missouri team. When they needed to get a big run play, they ran behind number 79. They ran behind him in order to get there and to order to finish. He reminds me a lot of Troy Fautanu. I see that there's a lot of talent here, and I do think he's going to be a very good tackle, and he's got the patience. And look, the Jets also want guys that are durable. This is someone that has started 30 consecutive games in college. That, to me, is very impressive. And even when you look at some of the tackles in this draft, a lot of them have bigger questions than Membou. Will Campbell, does he have the length to stay on the outside? Josh Simmons from Ohio State had an injury. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? We looked on the Banks Jr. I mentioned. He missed a game at the end of the season, had some durability issues. So there seemed to be a lot of knocks that could be long-term issues. And Membou seemed like the cleanest prospect of all the tackles. So let's get to the elephant in the room here, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that want to talk about this. And that is Tyler Warren. Because I do think that a lot of people are going to be upset about this pick because they did not get Tyler Warren. I think that there is a section of this fan base, and I understand the frustration, that was dead set on getting Brock Bowers last season. They were dead set on getting him because they thought he was a great generational talent. And to be fair, he is. The biggest issue with him is the Jets didn't have an offensive line. They went in with 2 30-year-olds who basically couldn't even get through the season last year at the tackle position. Thank God for Olu now being the left tackle for the Jets. But now a lot of people are saying, well, you could get a tackle on day 2. I looked at it this way. This is a draft that is incredibly deep at the skill positions. But the one thing I would say is this. I feel that this is a skill position draft that isn't top heavy like last year. Of course, you had all the great receivers that went in the first round of last year. But when I look at this draft, I don't exactly love a lot of the receivers at the top end of this draft, but I do like them on day 2. And the same goes for the tight ends. There is a drop off at the tight end position from Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland down. I get that. But when I look at how many talented tight ends there are in this draft, I look at how many wide receivers are in this draft. To me, I think the Jets have now put themselves in a great position for day 2, where there's a scenario where they get a playmaker offense and an interior defensive lineman or an impact defensive player, or they could get 2. And when I mean skill position, that could be a tight end, a receiver. There's a scenario where I could see the Jets easily getting the best available tight end in round 2 and the best available tight end in round number 3. And who knows? There might be a situation where the Jets can move up in the second round or maybe even move up into the back end of the first round. They have a grade on someone they really like. Now, again, I am going to do tomorrow before the second round, I'm going to do a preview of players to watch for on night 2 And after the Jets make their final pick on night 2, I will come on here live. We'll break it down. We'll look forward to day 3. And on day 3, of course, we will go over the entire draft. And one of my favorite periods, of course, the undrafted free agency signing. So again, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content this weekend. But if you were to ask me today, as Ted McMillan goes 8 to Carolina, I'm a little surprised that he went there. But I'm very curious now with pick number 9 for the Saints. Could that be a landing spot for Shador or Jackson Dart? And again, my mock draft, I have the Giants trade back in with the Broncos at 20 to get a quarterback. So we'll see how that turns out. But before I get to your comments, and again, I see a lot pouring in. I'll get to them in a second. And if you want to jump to the front of the line and make a donation, use that super chat feature. But I look at the tight ends that could be there. Mason Taylor from LSU is a guy like. Elijah Arroyo is a guy like. Terrence Ferguson is a guy they've done a ton of homework on. Gunnar Helm, especially on the 3rd round. I think there's a lot of very good tight ends. And even the wide receivers. In my last Jets 7-rounder, I actually had the Jets drafting the wide receiver position in round 3. I am going with Kyle Williams from Washington State. He's a guy I really, really like. But who knows? There's a chance that there could be a really good receiver at the top of the 2nd round because there could be a run on offensive linemen. There could be a run on quarterbacks. And what that does is those runs, especially if you play fantasy football, it pushes good players down the board. Now, again, I don't think like Emeka Egbuka is going to make it to round 2, but could we see the Iowa State receivers and Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, especially Higgins with his size, there at pick 42? That's certainly a possibility. Jalen Royals from Utah State, Trey Harris from Ole Miss, Jack Beck from TCU, Isaiah Bond from Texas. There's a lot of really nice, intriguing prospects at the wide receiver position, but there also could be a lot of great defensive players, and I'll go more into depth to it tomorrow, but let's get to some of your questions and your instant reactions here as I get a lot of comments. And again, guys, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest content. And Jacob, my good buddy, who I know is on a trip to D.C., good to hear from you, and he's ecstatic about the Membou. Of course, me and Jacob have had a lot of crazy, wild Jet stories, including a lot of different times going to the games. A lot of great stories with Jacob. You know, he really does a great job and helps me go to a lot of Jet games. So I really appreciate him being here for this moment. Tony Alexio, glad that our trenches are fixed to win the battle. But the thing, too, is this is how I feel like it's going. I feel like this is the lesser pressure cooker for the Jets. Because when I was going through all the different scenarios, because this draft is presenting a ton of different scenarios. The thing I looked at for the Jets was what would be more desperate for them? And I kept coming back to if you take the tackle at 7, you feel a lot less desperate at 42 and 75 or 73. The thing with it is I also think the Jets could have maybe even traded down at this pick, as Tony Alexio asked. I think the only trade down, Tony, is, and again, I'm trying to hit your question. I don't know why it's not popping up there. Hold on one second. There we go. I think the big thing with the trade down for me, and I tweeted this at my handle at Rich Sports Talk, the trade down opportunity for me would have been the Bears potentially at 10. If Ashton Jeanty was there at 7, I think you would have had a team call. Because he really was that really great blue chip player that I could see someone coming up for. I couldn't see anyone coming up for Tyler Warren. I thought maybe the Saints at 9 to do a swap to hope that the Panthers wouldn't take the player they wanted, or if the Panthers knew that the Saints were going to take a quarterback, like all that different shenanigans as the Saints pick is in right now. But I just don't think that opportunity presented itself. I don't think it did. Unfortunately, it didn't come up for the Jets. You didn't have that much interest in Tet. If the Raiders passed on Jeanty, I think there could have been a different scenario. But don't forget, too, I think the other player that a team might have traded up for, I really think there were 2 options. And the first one was Jeanty. The other one was Graham. The thing, though, is Graham got screwed up because the Browns in that trade with the Jaguars, when they traded down to 5, I thought that could be where Membou went potentially, or a tackle. But then you saw Graham go there, and I do think that highly impacted the draft because, again, Graham to me was intriguing because he seemed like a player that could easily be on the Saints radar, easily be on the Panthers to me. That could have been a likely swap, 9-7. But I'm very curious. My last mock draft, I took a big swing. I said Jackson Dart going as I hit my microphone, and I apologize, especially if you have headphones on, as the Saints are coming up. I predicted Jackson Dart. We'll see if that gets true. But again, guys, we will have, of course, a deeper dive into the Jets tomorrow when you also have a very interesting thing, too, where I'm going to break down all the players that are left over. Sorry if I keep looking to my right, as Kelvin Banks goes number 9. And I said this on my mock draft the other day. I said, look, do not be surprised if he goes in the top 10. And he does right here. An interesting thing, too, that LeJay Douzable brought up is that when you look at the Jets, their starting 5-0 linemen are all under the age of 27, which is incredible. But the other big thing I have to look at, too, is this. And a lot of Jets are very happy. John Simpson with the sunglasses emoji. I really love it. The running backs are ecstatic about this pick. Here is the other reason why I think the Membou pick makes a lot of sense, and it's something that we're not talking about a lot right now. We've talked about, of course, the contracts. I mean, Breece Hall, of course, was one of those key pieces today, and I'll get to my thoughts on Breece in a sec, was he's going to have to get paid soon. We know Sauce is going to get paid. We know Garrett's going to get paid. Probably Jermaine's going to get paid. So with people coming up to get paid, you look at one option. I brought this up a couple times, and I don't really think a lot of other Jet reporters or Jets content creators have brought this point up, but AVT could be someone that the Jets don't extend long-term, because even though he played the entire season last year, he's had 2 lower body injuries that have cost him the majority of 2 seasons back-to-back. And we'll have to see what this new regime thinks of him. If he can stay healthy, that's one thing, but if he gets nicked and misses a couple games, I'm curious what this regime will think. Don't forget, they've also brought in a very good young center who they really like and has chemistry with Justin Fields. I've also thrown this out there too. Is there a scenario where maybe Tippmann becomes a long-term guard on this team? It's certainly possible. And to me, if you lose AVT, for example, you still would have Tippmann that can kick over the right guard position. You have a center. And the other big thing, too, is it's a lot easier to get a guard because you're seeing it in these drafts. A lot of these tackles in college, they don't have the wingspan or the foot speed to play tackle, but you kick them inside. That could be a guy you could draft next year. And the other big thing with AVT, too, which also could be an intriguing possibility, is when you're looking at this team, I think this team is going to value draft picks, and this team is going to really value those compensation picks. And if AVT goes to free agency, even if he only plays 12 to 13 games next year, there will be a team that will give him a bag, because mid-20-year-old guards do not get to free agency often. And if that happens, the Jets will get a very nice compensation pick back. But now the Jets have put themselves in a position where they know what their tackles are going to be. Membou, and you have Fashanu. They know that one of their interior linemen is going to be Tippmann. I think they like to keep Simpson around long term. But they've put themselves in a position where they are not desperate and they're not stretching as the Bears are on the clock. If I had to predict, it's probably going to be Tyler Warren here, which I know, again, Tyler Warren will probably drive a couple of Jets fans crazy, because if Tyler Warren has an unbelievable season, I know there's going to be a lot of people griping that the Jets made the wrong selection. But look, I still think this is the right call. I still think this is a smart decision, because when I look at this draft, I feel like you can find a very good starting caliber tight end on day 2. And when you look at the history of the NFL draft, how many great tight ends have come out in round 2, round 3, round 4? Rob Gronkowski, Sam Laporta, George Kittle. I mean, these weren't first-round picks. These were guys taken in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round, and they still became incredibly dynamic players for their team despite being drafted where they were. But overall, I think this was the right decision. I'm incredibly happy. I know there's a lot of Jet fans that are upset that Tyler Warren is not on this team. And look, Tyler Warren, I think, is going to be a very productive tight end from day 1. As I'm just trying to see who the Bears are bringing in right now. My prediction is Tyler Warren. So I think he's going to go to the Bears, because I do think Kmet's also on when you look at Kmet, he also has only 1 year left on his contract. Sorry, they are milking this pick. Sorry, I just keep looking just to see who's being selected. But look, I think Membou was the right decision. I think he's a plug-and-play right tackle. And the big thing, too, is I look at the Jets can get a very good playmaker. If the Jets come out of this draft with their right tackle, and if we leave tomorrow night on Friday, and the Jets walked away with a receiver, a tight end, and a tackle, I think you would feel very good about this draft. Heck, even they walked out with a tight end and a defensive tackle. I think you, as a fan base, would be very happy. I'm very curious to see how they will attack the second round. They do the 42nd pick. Is it a scenario where they try to trade back a little bit and gain an extra third round pick to try to fill out the depth chart? Or are they looking for top tier talent? Sorry, again, I thought they were making the Bear selection, but now Goodell's come up. I'm seeing who it is. I'm guessing it's probably Tyler Warren. Again, some of you might have already put in the comments because some people are already putting the picks out there early on Twitter, which is something I absolutely can't stand, is when they put like the picks out like 3 minutes before they're announced on television. And now they're doing a tribute. So again, I have the volume off, so that's why I keep looking over the TV. But I'm very curious to see. So now we're getting some more comments again. Super chat, jump to the front of the line, or if you want to make a donation. Yeah, the Jaguars trade. I mean, it is funny because I do want to tell you guys a story here. To get in the mood, because it's draft day, I decided to watch the classic Kevin Costner movie earlier this morning, Draft Day. And again, I know some of the parts are a little bit ludicrous, but again, we all know the big scene with the trade between the Browns and the Jaguars. And when that happened, I'm like, did they watch Draft Day this morning and get this idea? Because again, the Browns, I think the Browns fleeced the Jaguars because the Browns now have 33. They have the other 30 pick with the Jaguars. They can easily go back into the first round. They can easily go back. But the biggest thing for the Browns and the biggest win is they got a first-round pick in 2026, which to me is an incredible asset because when you look at that asset, that is an incredible one in an incredibly talented quarterback draft. Because, look, I think that they might draft someone here day 2, but I think the Browns look at it as a long-term solution. They look at next year's draft as being better. Wow. Colston Loveland went before Tyler Warren. That, to me, is a shocker. Now, again, I really like Colston Loveland. I actually had him mocked to the Bears in my last mock. I've had him mocked between there, but I also will make a prediction right here live as we are covering the draft. With Loveland going here at 10, I will not be shocked that the Colts who have pick 14 are going to try to come up here. I will not be shocked if they try to come up with San Francisco, Dallas, or Miami to ensure that they get a tight end. But, man, I am surprised Colston Loveland, like that was not my bingo card, that Colston Loveland would go before Tyler Warren. That, to me, is a very big surprise. I also thought, too, that he could be a trade-up target for the Chargers, reunite him with Harbaugh. But, man, that was something. Look, I think the Jets also had the next – it was a safe pick. I agree with you, Jets, Poughkeepsie. But the other big thing, too, is with the Jags. It's a weird selection because I love the idea of Travis Hunter. I love what he brings to the table. But the biggest thing is you need to help Trevor Lawrence, and I'm curious how they're going to use him. Are they going to use him more as a receiver than a corner? Look, their corners were terrible, too. But if you're going to use him more as a corner – that could limit your reps with Trevor Lawrence. And the other thing, too, is you went all in to get this guy. Now you've also given up a great second-round pick this year, which could have been used on an offensive lineman, could have been used on a tight end, could have been used on a piece. I'm very shocked by that, basically, that they did that. Tony Alexio. So a couple things with this, Tony. And, again, great question as always. I think safety is a position I don't see the Jets doing anything until maybe round 3. I think the first person who they really like is Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State in the 3rd round. I could see them maybe going after him there. I think what they'll try to do is hope a guy falls to the 4th or 5th round, kind of in the range for Andrew Makuba from Texas. I think Jalen Reed, the other safety from Penn State, again, he could bring something different to the room. He was in my last Jets mock draft. because he brings a little bit more of that Jamal Adams run safety, strong safety that can come, blitz, play up in the box. Maybe he's not as great as coverage, but I think the Jets have a lot of cover guys on the back end, and they could really use a guy like that with a different set of skills to bring into that room. So I think realistically, I could see the Jets waiting until later on this draft. Now, the big thing I also think, too, is I want to get to a very important point. And again, guys, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest content. Again, we're going to do a whole draft preview tomorrow, and we will do a draft recap after the draft tomorrow, after the Jets make their final pick. And again, if they do somehow make a pick tonight, we will come back on live to discuss the pick if they do make a pick. I doubt they'll trade back up. I think they want to keep their assets. If anything, they want to accrue assets. But I just see the Jets basically holding pat for tonight. But look, let me get to the Breece Hall stuff, because I do think it's very important. And I know it sent like a panic through Jets lands. And Connor Hughes, I talked to him leading up to the draft. And I texted him today and asked him his thoughts on that, because the Josina report. And he also talked about on SNY today. And he basically said, look, the Jets are taking calls, but they're not like actively shopping. And I think that's the right choice. Because if a team came in and offered the Jets a crazy offer, like, hey, we're going to give you a great pick this year and also a future first next year, I think the Jets would be foolish not to take it. So again, I also think that the Jets, the other thing I keep saying is, this is a whole new regime that doesn't have any ties to the former players that were drafted here. They don't have any investment in them because they didn't draft these guys. If I had to put money on it, I think Quincy would be dealt before Breece on this roster. But the other thing, too, is Breece is coming off his worst year. If anything, the time to trade Breece would be at the end of next season if he has a great year, or at the trade deadline. Like, let's say the Jets are 3-4, 3-5. It's not going the right way, but you have a competitive team that's trying to make a Super Bowl run. That's when you do it. Right now, it's not the time to do it. I think the biggest thing, too, was if Ashton Genty fell to them at 7, it would open up the trade talk. So either the Jets would take Genty and then move Breece for additional capital, or more likely a team that really wanted Genty would come up, like the Bears or a team like the Cowboys or something. So to me, I feel it was more of one of those pre-draft day, more smoke and mirrors, more, okay, this is what's going on right now. This is what they're trying to push, basically. The other thing I love about this, too, is you look at the ages. Membou's 21, Olu is 22. They have 2 incredibly young tackles. They are also getting a mauler. This is someone that's going to make sure that not only is the quarterback clean, but he's a guy they need in the run game. One thing I felt the Jets lacked last year was oomph on the offensive line. Olu's game is a great pass blocker. He's not a tone setter necessarily in the run game. When Morgan Moses got hurt, you saw a difference on this offensive line. They didn't have that guy that had that nasty streak, that guy that you just knew just run behind them and you're going to get first down. They have that now in Armand Membou. I also think, too, for Breece Hall, if we want to talk his value, he's probably looking at this and loving it because this is the best offensive line they've had. They know they're going to run the ball, where last year they barely gave him touches. But for Jets fans that are upset with Tyler Warren, I also find it funny that Colston Loveland is the first tight end that goes. Although Robert Saleh's pick is coming in, I'm guessing it's probably a Georgia defensive edge, maybe Shamar Stewart. I mean, it would be funny if they drafted Tyler Warren just to push George Kittle a little bit. I mean, in some weird scenario, like, God forbid Warren somehow gets into the 20s, which I don't see that happening. Like, I would try to trade back up to get him. I think he's that good of a tight end, but I just don't see that happening. I don't see the Jets also trading back up for a quarterback. I know that's going to be a major talking point. I think the Jets, if anything, if I had to put money on it, would trade back in the second round, try to get an additional third-round picks. They have 3 picks on day 2. I mean, that's just what my thought process would be. But again, guys, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out in the chat. Make sure you use the super chat to the front of the line with your questions. But again, the Jets draft Armand Membou. Already talking about his interactions with Aaron Glenn, saying he's a cool-ass dude. I'm sorry, I'm still geeking out right now. And I do think that this is a very good pick for the Jets, a very safe pick for the Jets. And look, the Jets, build up your trenches because it's very difficult in the NFL to win with bad trenches, but it's also very difficult to find great trench players. Once you get the trenches figured out, you can trade for wide receivers. You can draft developmental wide receivers. You can draft developmental guys. You can find skill position players. It's hard to find great offensive linemen. Let's just call it frank. It's incredibly difficult. But Mikael Williams going from Georgia to San Francisco. Again, if you're watching the draft right now, I think one thing to keep an eye is Tyler Warren to the Colts at 14, although they might have to jump up with there. I'm very curious, though, because Dallas is sitting there at 12, and Deion's son is there at 12. Do the Cowboys, make this an interesting first round? Don't forget, Jerry had to be talked out of Johnny Football. So I'm very curious to see what Dallas does. But I almost will say selfishly, and I've said this before, I kind of want Shedeur to go to the Giants just because of the drama that would bring. O-line, great Cartman pitch, by the way. O-line, man, never become available by trade for a reason. Why receiving tight end do all the time? You're right. Like, look right now, the players that are on the block. Like, Mark Andrews is on the block. Like, there's a world where maybe the Jets don't take a tight end day 2 and they trade for Mark Andrews. Like, you look at the guys that are getting shopped. Oh, it's receivers. Oh, it's tight ends. It's running backs. The positions you don't see shopped, quarterback, offensive line. Like, those are the 2 least shopped positions in the sport. You see even defensive linemen get from time to time, but you don't see offensive linemen traded. Like, look at last year's trade deadline. We were shocked when a starting tackle was traded, but that was the only tackle traded. How many receivers at the trade deadline got traded? How many tight ends get moved? How many running backs get moved? Offensive line is so difficult to find. Like, just look for the Jets. They didn't address the position for years, and it cost them for years. It cost them so much for years trying to rebuild this thing and failing. And again, if they hit on the offensive line, they're in a good position. If they missed, well, have you seen what Mekhi Becton has done? That was a pick that, for me, is a pick that will live in infamy for the Jets. And again, you have Tristan Wirfs on the block there. It's a position where I just looked at it and I was like, okay, I personally, when I went back in time, would have gone with Tristan Wirfs. But again, hindsight's, of course, 2020. But, man, I'm just excited the Jets just got a very good player. Like, this has been a guy that I've really focused on for the long time. And look, the Jets have put a lot in this offensive line. Fashanu and Membou are first-round picks. Vera Tucker's a first-round pick. Tippmann's a second-round pick. Wow, the Cowboys going with Tyler Booker. I mean, I love that guard from Alabama. Man, I was like, could they get Deion's kid? All right, Miami's on, so we're going to keep an eye on Miami. Although, I think they should go offensive line here, but I'm curious if Miami now is going to go with Tyler Warren just because he fell all the way to 13. I'm very curious with what they're going to do, especially now with Booker going ahead. I'm very curious. Again, chat, let me know what you think Miami's going to do. It's probably early for Josh Simmons or Josh Connerly, but there's a chance. Their guards are really bad. Like, I actually had my last Will Campbell falling to them, and he kicked inside the guard. Kelvin Banks Kelvin Banks off the board, sorry. So Tate Radage is a big jump down to number 2. I'm very curious to see what Miami does. I kind of wonder, too, if Indianapolis just swaps with them to try to get Tyler Warren here. But, man, the quarterbacks are falling. Like, I think the back end of this draft could be very fun. Shedeur sitting there in the 20s. If Jackson Dart's sitting there in the 20s, I think that this could be a very intriguing draft. Where do you think Steelers will fall? I think Pittsburgh's the last place is 21. In my last mock draft, I had the Giants coming up to 20. Look, I think the Broncos are going to be the most fascinating team in this draft because the Steelers are desperate for a quarterback at number 21. And I think the Broncos have a very good roster. I don't think there's a player at that point that I would really push for. I would try to do what the Jags did. The Browns did. I would try to get future assets for the 2026 draft to put myself in a good position. So if I'm Denver, I'm trying to get to the top of the second round where I can take a running back. I try to get an extra pick maybe in this draft, but I really look for picks in the 2026 draft. And here's the other reason why I think the Broncos would do that move. They might even take 80 cents on the dollar. Great teams and great GMs look at their competition. So much we look at within the division. But look at the AFC. Where are the Broncos in the AFC right now? They're in a wild card picture because we all think Kansas City and maybe the Chargers might push them, but we think those are the two best teams in the AFC West. We don't really see the Broncos being a division winner. But we can see Denver being a playoff team, specifically the wild card. Who is in that wild card picture with them? It's the Steelers. So why would you potentially help the Steelers out by giving them a quarterback that can help them potentially knock you out of the playoffs? I don't think you do that. But if there's a team like, let's say, the Giants in the NFC, who's not in your conference and you're not in direct competition with, and they want to give you draft picks, well, that just makes a lot of sense. At what point does it seem worth it for the Jets to trade up? Matt, that is an excellent question. I think it could make sense to move up in the second round. To come back into the first, it would cost a lot. Let's be frank. It will cost a lot. But the main question you also asked, too, is what's it for? Is there a quarterback that they view as a franchise quarterback in this draft? That's there. Maybe. But I think realistically, they are going to look until day 2, maybe hope someone falls. The big question is there a defensive tackle that they value so much that they want to move up for, or a wide receiver? Like, let's play a hypothetical game with you. Let's say, and I don't think Tyler Warren's going to be there, so let's look at a receiver, for example, which again is a position that the Jets probably want to upgrade. So let's look at the wide receivers. Let's look at it and go, okay, let's look and say maybe Emeka Egbuka is sitting there at 26, 27. If you think he's going to be a great wide receiver and an instant number 2 on this team, maybe. And no, Matt, Golden has not been selected yet, unless the Dolphins just selected him, but I haven't seen that pick come through yet. But overall, I'm very happy with the Armand Membou pick. The biggest thing, too, is like in the alternate reality I keep living in, it would have been this. Jets take Tyler Warren, Colston Lovener, tight end, and basically now we'd be saying, okay, what the heck do you do with right tackle? Because you're starting to see a little bit of a run on offensive linemen. And my biggest fear was we got into round 2, and my last mock draft plan for this, and my best available for it too was Ozzie Trapillo, the BC tackle. Now, probably early. I think he's more of an early third round grade, but with the way the draft unfolded, there's so many great tackles being selected. I'm like, okay, the Jets have to get a tackle here. If they don't get one now, they have to stretch. But if they don't, then they're really going to be hurting in round 3. Right now, you feel a lot better. It's like, okay, we can look for the best tight end available. We can look for the best wide receiver available. We can look for the best defensive player available, potentially, too. Kevin! Love this pick. Now I'm needing to pick Ferguson at 73 so I can call him Third Ferguson. You don't want to call him Turd Ferguson, man? Come on. That's not a bad one. Look, for Ferguson, I'm kind of trying to think if he would be in that range at 73. I'm trying to think. And just what Ferguson are you thinking about? Just because there's a couple Fergusons, Kevin, just so I know. Are you thinking Terrence Ferguson, the tight end from Oregon? I think there's a chance he'll be there in round 3. that could be a possibility. Maybe the Jets go receiver and then go to Ferguson in round 3. I mean, that's clearly a possibility. I think the Jets came out of this. They took a safe pick. They took a smart pick. And the big thing, too, is what organizations do you want to emulate in football right now? You want to emulate the Eagles. You want to emulate the Lions. You want to emulate those two teams. They've built through the offensive line. They've done an unbelievable job. But here's the big reason why you invest in the offensive line early. It allows you to develop guys. You don't need guys to come in and play right away. So, for example, if the Jets, like let's say in 3 or 4 years, they're looking to embrace the interior, maybe long-term, they can take a chance on a tackle in round 3 or 4. It's not going to kill the franchise, but they don't have to play him right away. They can develop him the right way, develop him in practice, and by the time they need him to start, they're ready to go. Because especially now with college reps and how much they play standing up, how much they're in the 2-point stance, you need a lot of development coming in here. So I do think that would be a smart decision as well. I mean, what if Miami took Shador? I know that's not going to happen. Could you imagine? Matt, I don't think Shao gets to round 5. I think he goes day 2. Matt, if I'm honest, if the Jets are picking a quarterback day 3, I think it's going to be Cam Miller from North Dakota State. Again, he's gotten a lot of reps. He's been highly productive. He's a good athlete. And I think he's someone to push Jordan Travis for that third quarterback role. I think he's the guy when you look at the Jets, they've looked at all the quarterbacks, but especially the day 3 guys, he's the one they've done a ton of homework. So if the Jets don't go with the quarterback, I do think that would be in round 2 or 3. I think that could be a possibility. Okay, guys, I know I'm looking over here. I'm just checking on my TV. So good thing the Jets invest in the offensive line because the Dolphins have gone Kenneth Grant with Michigan. Look, incredibly talented player, but I'm curious to see his motor. But I'm a little surprised with that pick because the Dolphins' offensive line is horrible. And it's like, especially with Tua, I'm like, could you protect Tua a little bit? Could we use Brees to trade? I don't see a player you use to trade up in the first round to get. Like that's the thing. Like the thing with Brees is I don't think you're getting great value. Have him behind this great offensive line. Pad his running stats. Get a great pick for next year's draft, if anything. I don't see the value of trading Brees Hall right now. You're not getting his full value. Have him go and rush for 1,400 yards next year and then trade him before you have to pay him a big contract. Or you trade him midway through the season next year. Like now is not the time to trade Brees Hall. There are certain times to do it. Now is not one of them. And the big thing too is I look at this draft. I know it's not a sexy pick. I know some Jet fans will be upset. Although I will say surprisingly, guys, that I am a little surprised with the chat tonight. I thought we were going to get a lot of complaints about them not getting tight ends. But what they are getting is a really good right tackle who really progressed last year, that kept getting better, that's a great run blocker, and more importantly, did not give up a sack. Olu was great in pass pro. You now have another great right tackle in pass pro. Now you wonder, too, with Membou at right tackle, how does this help AVT? Because AVT has kind of been on island the last couple of years because he's had a revolving door at right tackles, and a lot of it's been crap. A lot of it's been Max Mitchell. A lot of it's been Warren when Morgan Moses wasn't there. Like, could AVT become a Pro Bowl guard now having a really good right tackle next to him so he gets better matchups so he's able to pull more? I think that is another thing we're not talking about. Does this elevate the play of the rest of the offensive line? Does this make Brees Hall better? Does this make Justin Fields better? Let's see. The Jets aren't trading back in. The team better hope Corley can play. So Jacob and I have had some spirited debates about Corley. In fact, I remember distinctly during the preseason last year when we were watching in the first preseason game as the Colts are coming up. If they don't take Tyler Warren right now, I will be shocked. But I remember at MetLife, we were conversing in the seats, and I watched him have a really nice return against Washington. And I remember talking to Jacob and saying, I don't know if this kid's going to make an impact at the wide receiver position, and there goes Tyler Warren to the Colts. But I do think he is an intriguing weapon to use as a jet sweep, which, again, was the one play they used. And, again, I know he basically had the fumble, but, again, it was a successful play, even though the Jets never went back to that play. I don't know why. But Corley always was like, why aren't they letting him return kicks? He's a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. And I do think we are going to learn a lot about this team through this draft because we have a whole new fresh set of eyes. I know Corley was on the Broncos' radar last year. I'm very curious to see what they think about. For all we know, maybe Jameson Williams is available from the Lions and the Jets trade the third-round pick for him or a third-round pick and get a late day 3 pick for the Lions. That could be a possibility. I think that we're going to learn a lot about Corley. If they draft a receiver or 2 receivers, they're not high on Corley. If they draft a receiver late, maybe they're high on Corley than we think. Because don't forget, Corley to me is not a polished product, and he is someone that to me could be really intriguing in this offense because this seems like it's going to be a lot of running. There's going to be a lot of options. You're going to have a lot of quarterback design runs. Malachi Corley could be a great asset on jet sweeps in this offense. Like, to me, he is one of those players where I look at and you wonder what players could really benefit from this new staff. And I really think it's one of them because Malachi Corley, it's clear they drafted him last year, but they didn't have a plan. They drafted him, and they're just like, we just hope it works out instead of what can we do to make this kid successful. And don't forget, you had Aaron Rodgers, and we know Aaron Rodgers doesn't like rookie receivers. And I think that's a big reason why they buried him on the depth chart. They brought in Devontae Adams. They put Alan Lazard in all those reps. It's because of Aaron Rodgers. And now I wonder if Malachi Corley gets a fair opportunity here because it's a whole new regime. So you think AVT becomes like Laken Tomlinson when he was in San Francisco and becomes a Pro Bowler because of Trent Williams? I think that's a little bit of a stretch. But again, if you have a better tackle and a better center next to you, it makes your life a lot easier. I mean, AVT has basically gone through a revolving door. Even last year with Morgan Moses. Like once Moses out, that right side of the line became a liability. Tyler Warren can't run routes. They touched one. Well, I know Colts fans are happy. Higgins. I don't think Higgins is good. Higgins and Ferguson would be awesome. Yeah, Higgins could be an intriguing option. I'm curious if he's one of those guys that goes at the back end of the first round. We'll have to see. Although pick 15 is coming up, I think Shamar Stewart might green here for our old friend Jeff Ulbrich. Jacob, you really want to go down the Zach Wilson 2.0 road again? I mean, where's the same numbers, same size, went to the same high school? I mean, Jackson Dart scares me. I think he can be the next Zach Wilson and not in a good way. So if the Jets draft a quarterback, I think it'll be round 2. Milroe, I think, intrigues them. I think you look at the quarterbacks, like I said, Cam Miller from North Dakota State, I think is an intriguing possibility as well. I think just from the homework they've done on players, it seems like they are interested in Milroe. I think they're interested in Quinn Ewers, but only if he maybe falls to day 3, and Kyle McCord. But it's funny. I think we're going to learn a lot about this team by the quarterback they take. And don't forget, they might just wait till next year. It's a better quarterback class. They're not pressured to draft a quarterback this year. Jacob Leftwich, I know Jacob's going to buy that. He's not going to buy the jersey. He's just going to scratch off the Wilson and put Dart on the back. Yeah, the problem is if he becomes a bust, people are going to cross out the D and put an SH on that basically for a Jet jersey. That should be a fun one. Jack Star's is a baller better than Sanders? They're different players. I feel like Dart has more upside, especially with the mobility he brings to the table as a runner. But Shadur is very heady. He makes smart and quick decisions. He's very accurate. I think he's going to be, if he's put in like a West Coast system with quick routes, quick out, get the ball out quickly, kind of the system like Goff's in, I think he'd be very successful. Dart, to me, has a lot more upside. And look, if you get the right value for Dart, I don't hate it. I just don't think he's going to be there. If I had to put money on it, if Dart is there, and I'm going to stay on this because I had a feeling that a team's going to jump the Steelers at 21. I will say this. If Jackson Dart makes it to 20, do not be shocked if the New York Giants give up the farm to come up for two very important reasons. Number one, that staff is desperate. They know if it doesn't go well next year, they're gone. Number two, because they're desperate, what does that mean? They're not necessarily thinking about next year's draft. So if you call the Broncos and say, we'll give you a lot, like my projected trade to the Broncos was this, and it didn't even involve a first-round pick next year, but it involved the Giants' 34th pick, their 99th pick. They have 2 third-rounders. They have an early third and a late. I gave 99. Then next year's second-round pick and a either compensatory 5th or 6th. So the Broncos get 2 good assets, well, really 1 great asset next year. They move down to 34, which puts them in good range to get a running back, but they also get another third-round pick in this draft. And for the Giants, they are desperate. And desperation makes people do crazy things. So if Jackson Dart, the longer these two sit here, I would not be surprised if you see the Giants get aggressive, because don't forget, Pittsburgh's desperate. Maybe both are on a 20, and then it becomes a bidding war because Pittsburgh's taking one of them. I think the biggest thing in this draft could be this. If Shedur's there at 21 and the Steelers pass on him, it tells me one of two things. They really don't believe in him, or more likely, they're all in on Aaron Rodgers. They are going to go all in on Aaron Rodgers and basically mortgage the farm to get him. So, it is kind of funny, too, because I do see a lot of the Giant fans' reaction to the Abdul Carter one. Like, I thought Travis Hunter was the best player in the draft. But the big thing, too, is this is the other thing that I do think you have to appreciate. I actually think the Jets got the better offensive lineman than the Patriots. The Patriots needed an offensive tackle to play the blind side. I think they went out and they got Campbell, but Campbell has a wingspan that is not only short, but historically short for the position. I think Membou has not only the potential to be the better starter early, but long-term could be a really great player. And the thing is, I do think they're going to run a lot of zone in Foxborough, so it might help alleviate some of that. But I just look at some of the knocks on Campbell. I mean, look, he struggles, doesn't have a lot of air, especially because of the short wingspan. If he misses on his punch, it's very easy to get around him. And, even though he's able to recover on a lot of the tape, you look at the power some of these defensive ends have, it could be something incredible. And look, the big thing, too, is I look at the penalties. He had 9 penalties last year, including 7 false starts. And he only played left tackle at college. So this is a player that, to me, could be someone that struggles mightily early and could be one of those great players, but later on in his career because he makes a move. I think a great example to compare this, and again, I know I'm going down here, and again, comment below what your thoughts. Make sure your thoughts on the pick, and if you want to make a donation or jump to the front of the line, use the super chat feature. I think a great example for Campbell to me is Robert Gallery. Now, Robert Gallery, of course, was the left tackle for the Raiders. He didn't work out as a left tackle, but he became a great guard for over a decade for the Raiders. But it's one of those ones where you're picked that really matters. So, for example, if Mekhi Becton, if the Jets selected, let's say, Mekhi Becton in the mid-20s, eventually ended up at guard, but was a great guard for the Jets, we'd feel a lot better about it. But if you're the Patriots and you took Campbell to be your number 1 left tackle, and he eventually becomes a guard, even if he becomes a great guard, taking him at 4 will seem like an incredible stretch. And I think that the Jets, when I look at the projections, I look at the size, I look at the physicality, I look at the production. I think Membou had better production. I think Membou is a better run blocker. I think Membou has the better size. He, of course, is the better wingspan. And when I look at Membou, like I look at a guy that's almost 15 pounds heavier than Will Campbell at the tackle position. I mean, this is someone that is a big dude that can maul people. And he was the right tackle. He didn't give up sacks. Like when you think of a lot of right tackles, you think they don't have the footwork to be great pass protectors. But he did an unbelievable job. Look, I don't think Shedeur is going to go in the 7th round. He will go at the early 2nd round. Like if you look at the draft order too, there's a lot of teams that might take that risk in round 2. I mean, there's a chance if he's there at 42. I know people are laughing about it, but the Jets, maybe they look at it for the value. I'm not saying they will, but they could. I mean, I just look at the top of the 2nd round. You have Cleveland there at 33. You have the Giants at 34. You have Vegas at 37. Even though they have Geno Smith, I wonder if they want to get their long-term quarterback. You have New Orleans at 40. Do they try to come up? I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities for Shedeur, especially in the 2nd round. But officially halfway through the draft with the Cardinals coming up on the board. But, I mean, this has definitely been a wildly entertaining NFL draft. That's for sure. The other thing I would look at, too, especially as we get into tomorrow. Now, again, and apparently Dolphin fans are loving the Jets fans will love this. Dolphin fans are not happy with the Kenneth Grant pick. They are not happy with that pick. I think they should have gone offensive line there. But look, I just feel like the Jets got a really good player. I feel they got the best tackle at the top of the draft. I think that was a very good job for what they did. And look, I think the biggest thing for this team is you feel a lot better going tonight too. And again, tomorrow we're going to go live here during the day. We're going to break down the remaining top prospects for round number 2, round number 3. We're going to go over all of them, the best available, talk about who could be a good fit, potential trade-ups, potential trade-downs. So we're going to have all that tomorrow. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of that great content. Again, we will also be coming on live tomorrow, Friday night, after the Jets make their final pick. Now, again, if they trade back from the 70th pick, we'll come on after that. But I want to do a breakdown after round 2. Look forward to day 3. And, of course, on Saturday, day 3, we'll come back after the end of the draft. We'll come live. We'll talk about the whole draft for the Jets, and then we will look at the undrafted market because there's always some interesting guys like Leonard Taylor last year was an intriguing guy that they were able to pick up in the undrafted market. But the Jets, they've invested in some serious beef on the offensive line. Armand Membou is the Jets offensive line, all 27 and younger. And it could be potentially one of the better offensive lines in the entire National Football League when all is said and done. Look, I'm excited. I hope you Jets fans are excited. We have plenty more great draft content coming your way, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. We'll be back here tomorrow with more New York Jets draft content. Who knows? Maybe we'll be back tonight if the Jets surprise us all and trade back in the 1st round. But until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich. And this is Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us.